Live back with you tonight. Thanks for staying on. Politicians have, over the years, burdened Eskom with a multitude of poorly qualified leaders. CEO André has complained about skills, yet at no point has it occurred to him that he also is poorly skilled at the helm of the power utility. These are the views of Economic Modeling Academy Director and former Statistician-General, Dr. Pali Lehohla. He believes Eskom requires engineers, not lawyers. Dr. Lehohla joins us now to elaborate on what course of action the new board should take. Dr. Lehohla, under load shedding, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for joining us tonight here on InFocus.
My teeth.
Well, I mean, let's just get it out of the way and immediately deal with it. You think André is just poorly qualified to be in any way leading a complex utility like Eskom?
Eskom is an engineering utility. It's an engineering institution. It is also, for its commercial purposes, an economic behemoth. And therefore, you need to translate the engineering concepts through economics into a commercial process. Beyond that, beyond those two professions, then you may have accountants who have to say, well, how do we pay our bills? And then lawyers who have to protect the IP of Eskom. But you do not want to put IP protectors and those who actually say, how do we pay the bills, ahead of engineers in the first instance and economics in the second. So when you look at the origins of Eskom, Bale was an engineer, and subsequent heads of Eskom were engineers. The change in guard starts around 2010, when non-engineers subsequently, in succession, get appointed, starting with Siriso Maduna, then Brian Molefe, then Pagamani, then Mavuso. Of course, an engineer gets into the scene, Matsela Koko. And then, of course, we got the Ruyter. So, over a period of 10 years, there's been a very deliberate value destruction based on who gets the top job of an engineering entity. And this is not acceptable. And the Ruyter finds himself thrust at the top of this institution at the time when we actually need engineering capability to reassemble Eskom as it interfaces with other engineering challenges, such as emanating from renewables.
Yeah. These
are the technologies that you need.
Yeah.
And you need somebody who grasps those quite well. You cannot have a brain surgeon who is a lawyer. That is a lawyer pretending to be a brain surgeon and therefore operating on the brains of South Africans. Yeah.
So
that's disaster.
So the debate, Dr. Lehohla, even initially in his appointment, was that he's not an engineer. He doesn't need to be an engineer. He can hire great engineers around him. What he needs to do is to lead those engineers to help him do at Eskom what he has been called there to do.
I've not seen a brain surgeon led by a lawyer. No lawyer can lead brain surgeons who are in a hospital. They'll be led by a brain surgeon. Eskom is so complex. It's like the brain. And it cannot be led by somebody who pretends to go to the throne and say he can assemble engineers. That is what, at the time of Margaret Thatcher and Reagan, and the idea of leadership as leadership and management, and content-free leadership. The writer is content-rich in law, and content-free in engineering, and he cannot occupy the apex position in an engineering economic complex such as Eskom.
So let's talk that.
Which this country's future depends.
Let's stay there. Content rich in law. So when the new board was appointed a couple of weeks ago, I got some energy experts and I asked them, do you think the first port of call for this board is to fire André de Ruyter? They say it's very difficult to answer that question because we do not know, we are not privy to the conversation as to why exactly was André de Ruyter hired in the first place. Because those who hired him know that he's very rich in legal content and very little in engineering content. So what was he hired to do in the first place there? Maybe it is, to an extent, to look at the legal matters at Eskom?
No. The matters at Eskom are engineering matters, particularly in the space of renewables and rapidly changing engineering systems for generation of electricity. Those are the frontier changes, and those require engineers, not lawyers. He can serve as a deputy, third-level deputy at Eskom to deal with matters of IP, not to lead engineering complexes. That's very wrong. In the 90s and the 2000s, there has been a lot of value destruction as a consequence of appointing content-free leadership or content-free people in positions of leadership, which require high levels of content. I mean, can you imagine when you are sitting there and discussing critical things at Eskom and inspecting different parts of the organization? Only those who are engineers will know where the problem is. For André, the blind are leading the lame.
Is it
and who appointed him and why they appointed him just shows the level at which we have fallen as a country.
So last week I spoke to Zukonati Mantshantsha on Friday, having announced that we are suspending load shedding for the weekend. And he says it's because it's the weekend, there's very little energy demand. First question is, of course, the previous week we were load shedding on the weekend. What had happened then as far as the low energy demand answer? But I then say to him, are you saying to us it's suspended today and maybe tomorrow? Are you not going to come back on Monday and say all of a sudden, yet again, there is energy constraints? Why is there no one at Eskom with a long-term plan to say that we know that on Monday we are going to meet this challenge again? Here's how we are going to augment against that so that there's continuous energy availability. Is this an André de Ruyter problem?
It is the fault of André de Ruyter. I mean, he has a spokesperson who knows nothing about engineering. He knows nothing about engineering. The board that has just been replaced didn't have engineers of note on the board. The chair is a competent medical professional, no doubt. Was a competent medical professional. But in as far as engineering, particularly electrical engineering, energy power and all these things, all those people are content free. They have general common sense knowledge around these things. And that complex system doesn't work on common sense. Put Lahuta at it, you'll mess it up just like a Ruyter.
So I see there is probably 2 or 3 chartered accountants, if I am correct, in that board. There's a mechanical engineer. I think there's 1 electrical engineer that is on there. And of course, there are some who are in the legal profession. Are you saying still in that board we are lacking content?
No. The board, I was saying the chair of the previous board. That's what I was talking about. The current board, I think, has been welcomed by those who know what happens at Eskom, including Matsila Koko. But Ted Blom was saying, no, you should have had more electrical engineers. My view may well be uninformed, would be we need the executive of Eskom as an electrical engineer or a team of engineers in that space, not André. Surely, can we imagine if there is a problem? Only the engineers who have been in the space will know which engineers they have to talk to. Now they have to go and tell André that we have heard about an engineer that way. André has to say, who is that one? What does he do? In the crisis, you need to know where to shoot, how to shoot, and not to be told aim left, right. You know the marching orders. Not only in the crisis, but in a critical institution such as Eskom. This is doing a disservice to the country.
Talk to me about your views on the term suspended, which we are faced with every now and again when they are trying to, I suppose, inspire us and give us some hope. We've suspended load shedding for the week.
I mean, you don't use such terms as suspend. When you say there is a cessation of hostilities, that's when you use the word suspension. But when there is no load shedding, you just say there will be no load shedding tomorrow, but not suspend. That's a profound term to use when you are in a calamitous situation and you know that this thing will only be one day. Right now, today, we are back to load shedding. You can't use the term suspend. And of course, suspend because there is a low load shedding. I mean, they are not low load shedding, but low demand for energy. It is not because there is low demand for energy. It is because continuously we have been disserviced with energy, and that has inspired low demand for energy. Low demand for energy is not caused by low economic activity. It's caused by the absence of reliable energy all the time, to the point where industry and business has been destroyed. So we are saying, no, we are not load shedding because there is no demand. I mean, the logic, the terminology, the thinking, the reasoning, it's so anti-developmental and almost, putting the blame on people and everybody else except themselves. Just think about this issue that was reported that his car has been connected to some other device, listening device and so on. Well, that's what we had. The people who connected that, at least if it's true that they said, well, this is a tracking device. So instead of focusing on the key issues at Eskom, he actually is seeking sympathy from society for claiming that he's being tracked, only to find that, this is a tracking device of a particular type. And the former police says this one is the most sophisticated. In what space are we actually operating? It's a space of spin. And you cannot put a spin doctor at the helm of Eskom.
On his third day in office, the chairperson of the new board at Eskom says if we think of the town of Ogies in Mpumalanga, if we were to overnight remove the town's role as a coal town, what would the people of that town be expected to do? When we continue next with Dr. Pali Lehohla, do those words represent a shift from the just transition speak we've been hearing? Is that the direction, or strategic direction, that this new board is likely to take? We'll ask that question next. Stay with us. Back live with you tonight, here on In Focus, and of course, still with us, Director of Economic Modeling Academy, Dr. Pali Lehohla, former statistician-general, and his views on the current situation at Eskom, in particular, his critique of the leadership of André. But we move to the chairperson who's coming in and his thoughts and views, for example, on the departure of us moving away from the role of coal in towns like Ogies in Mpumalanga. Does this in any way give us an indication of the possible strategic direction that this board would take? In other words, moving away from what many have been saying is the mothballing of the old power stations towards the renewable energy.
I think he was short of asking the question, why do you turn crude flay into a food plot? And why do you want to repurpose Komati when actually we should put all coal-fired power stations on track, or back on track, and all hands on deck to make sure that we deal with energy for South Africa? Because this lack of energy is killing the economy. It's killing the livelihoods. And what Mpho Makwana is asking is, when we close that, what do we give to the people of Ogies, of Witbank? What do we do with people of Middleburg? That's the right question to ask. Because then it starts asking the the question, what happens to their lungs? What happens to their history of living under those conditions for so long? What is all this just transition about that is discussed in air-conditioned, clothes-burning offices, which actually are devoid of the individuals that daily inhale coal fumes? And we come and say the planet cannot inhale coal fumes, and leaving the real people on the ground to suffer twice. First, the pulmonary diseases that they have suffered all along. Second, taking even those livelihoods they had. It is in Minister Mantashe's point where he says hunger kills immediately. Burning the planet gives you respite.
Yeah.
And this is what I think is inspiring on Makwana's statement on his first day at work, that what do we say to the people of office? What do we say to those of Dundee? And what do we say to those of the Transkei and those of Lesotho whose lungs have been destroyed by coal? These people are not on the agenda of this just transition, unfortunately. And I think Makwana and Mantashe have their finger on the pulse in as far as what do we do to secure energy, and that from coal in the immediate now when we have a crisis.
So I spoke to one energy lobby group about exactly that, and the question they put is, so are we saying the poor people of Mpumalanga must suffer twice? One, those pulmonary diseases that you're talking about, but also suffer in the future because of the impact of climate change on the environment? Or is it better to say, let's transition them, give them new skills so that they'll be able to be working in the future in that new environment?
Give them new skills while you use coal. And when we have transited and we are sure that they're on terra firma, provide them with pulmonary services of health and so on to mitigate the current. When we have prioritized them in that kind of way, it is clearer now that this transition is about people and planet and not about profits. As we drive it at the moment, it's all about profits, not even planet. So the question is quite misplaced in the offering of the solution itself. Perhaps we should ask, what do the people of Office say in relation to their situation for time immemorial? What do they desire, and what do they desire in the future? Given that we have some money for just transition, I'm sure they will decide on how best they can use such a fund. First, to rehabilitate their lungs through pulmonary, through medication and all those other things.
Yeah.
Second, through preserving the jobs and the livelihoods they have that is based on coal. Third, a parallel process of creating new investments, and they get training. You cannot stop their lives just like that, and that's what Makwana is asking. And that's not what the just transition is asking.
So are you suggesting that Barbara Creasy, as she goes, I think it's COP27 or maybe COP28, I'm not quite sure which number it is sitting at now, she should go there and tell the United Kingdom and others who are giving us this 8.5 billion rands that, sorry, we are prioritizing the energy security right now more than tackling climate change. So thanks, but no thanks.
She has to say, like yourselves, who are actually buying our coal from South Africa in tons and have changed the market price of this coal, we are now going back to prioritize the pricing of coal so that we can secure our energy based on coal. That's the starting point. Secondly, we actually say thank you to your 8.5 billion. And we want to understand how we actually are going to get this 8.5 and using the Paris Declaration for aid effectiveness, not these preconditions that you are giving to us, including those things that Minister Barbara Creasy says she doesn't understand. Yet, we have signed without understanding. At one point, I had the Swiss and the Brits trying to provide some money at STSA. A pithy 1 point something million rands. And I had to say to them, I'm running a 2 billion, 3 billion operation here. I'm not going to waste my time with your kind of regulations around how you distribute the money. Keep your money. I don't want to waste my time with this. This is what South Africa should do. I mean, 8.5 billion is nothing. Dollars. Absolutely nothing. In the context of the pension funds that we have that can finance Eskom, that can even finance the transition. I mean, we don't produce the panels. We don't have the technology for the panels. For heaven's sake, what benefit do we get from these risks? That those who produce them and have technology for them rush to coal at the slightest of inconvenience. I'm not suggesting that we should burn the planet, but we cannot be the fodder for burning the planet for the sake of others. And this is what South Africa has turned to be. And it is a poster boy for Africa and the world. And we are put there as the poster boy. We actually have to refuse this poster boy status completely. We can't be used.
Dr. Lahuta, do you in your hearts of hearts believe that this board will sooner than later relieve André de Ruyter of the burden of Eskom?
If they don't do that, and they put this man there who doesn't understand anything about engineering, the chair will have to be, one of the engineers will have to be in the meetings where he goes. They'll have to take decisions on his behalf. If I were André de Ruyter and I have to attend those meetings, my dignity will tell me that it's time for me to leave. I can't stand this indignity of parading myself in spaces that I don't qualify.
Economic Modeling Academy Director, Dr. Pali Lehohla, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight here on Info.
I hope I'll get some light back.
Hopefully, he will give you your lights back.